The sound of platinum snapping is quieter than you would think, but that Sunday morning, it rang through the patio like a gunshot. My 16-year-old niece, Madison, didn't even glance at me. Her eyes were glued to her phone, Liv streaming to her followers. She had ripped the vintage bracelet from my wrist, holding it aloft for the camera while declaring it tarnished junk. When it wouldn't slide over her hand, she didn't unclasp it, she yanked. The delicate safety chain, 80 years of family history forged into metal, sheared off and clattered onto the stone tiles below. My brother, Ryan, sipped lazily from his mimosa. Tiffany, my sister-in-law, didn't lift her gaze from her ring light. Madison giggled, "Oops, garbage anyway." No one stirred. No one said sorry. To them, it was just jewelry. They didn't understand that the bracelet was the fragile linchpin keeping a roof over their heads. Before I reveal just how costly that joke would be, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love seeing our community in the moment. I gathered the pieces from the cold stone. The platinum felt impossibly heavy in my palm, like a heartbeat had gone missing. Above me, brunch carried on. Tiffany fussed with the angle of her ring light, complaining about the shadows ruining her aesthetic. Ryan topped off glasses, laughing at a story he'd heard 1,000 times, playing the part of the affluent provider in a house he couldn't actually afford. This home was a set. The manicured garden, imported marble counters, the luxury SUV on lease, all a performance of perfection funded by maxed-out credit cards and unacknowledged bailouts. I was the invisible crew behind the scenes, Natalie, the archivist, the historian living in dust and silence. To them, I was dull. The spinster sister-in-law in sensible shoes, driving a 6-year-old sedan, tolerated because I was useful. I slid the broken bracelet into my pocket. I didn't shout, I didn't slam the table. A younger version of me would have sobbed, begged them to see the sentimental weight of what Madison had destroyed, but the woman on that patio felt something far different, a cold, surgical clarity. For years, I'd asked myself why I stayed, why I paid their property taxes when foreclosure loomed, why I financed last-minute vacations, why I secretly wired $60,000 a year to the elite music conservatory so Madison could study violin, all while they mocked my frugality. I told myself it was kindness, that I was the glue holding the family together. But Tiffany, now editing footage of my humiliation for her story, revealed the truth. It wasn't kindness, it was survival. The invisible chain of the fixer. When you grow up as the family problem solver, you start to equate your worth with usefulness. Love becomes transactional. Pay the bill, earn affection. Solve the crisis, gain respect. You wear the chain brick by brick, wire by wire, terrified that without it, you are nothing. I had spent 31 years believing that endurance would eventually secure me a seat at the table. I believed silence was dignity, my invisible support noble. But Madison, scrolling through her phone, already bored, proved otherwise. I hadn't been noble. I had been enabling. I taught them to see me as a resource, not a person. They saw an appliance. And when appliances break, you don't apologize, you discard. Tiffany waved a dismissive hand. Don't look so tragic, Nat. It was old anyway. Scrap metal, maybe a few bucks. I looked at her. At the house I'd kept afloat, at the child my money educated, the invisible chain around my neck didn't snap. It dissolved. I'm leaving, I said, voice quiet over the brunch music. Ryan didn't glance back. Okay, see you next week. Don't forget Mom's gift. I walked past the kitchen island, past the drawer where unpaid bills usually hid, out the front door and into my car. I didn't slam it. I closed the door gently. The silence inside was dense, not empty. It was the sound of a contract ending. The drive home blurred. I didn't speed or run red lights. I drove with the calculated precision of someone holding a detonator. In my apartment, the air was still and cool, smelling of old books and lemon polish, a stark contrast to Tiffany's perfumed garden party. I set my keys on the counter, brewed a cup of Earl Grey, and watched the steam rise. My hands didn't tremble. I carried the mug to my desk, opened my laptop. The glow illuminated stacks of archival boxes lining the walls. This was my life, quiet, orderly, secretly expensive. I logged into my bank account, then opened a new spreadsheet, the ledger of ghosts. For the first time in decades, I began typing numbers I had memorized. Ryan's first house mortgage when he lost his job, $42,000 Tiffany's boutique loan, bankrupt in 6 months. $25,000 down payment on their current showcase home, listed as a gift, $80,000. I stared. They strutted like royalty on Instagram, flaunting luxury while mocking my modest wardrobe and old car. Their kingdom rested on my money. Power isn't in spending, it's in control. And I controlled everything. I logged into the Elite Music Conservatory's donor portal, anonymous numbers, my account, navigate to active scholarships. There it was, Madison H. Artistic Merit Grant, $60,000 a year, fully funded by me. I had set it up 3 years ago. I wanted the best for her, opportunities I never had. I wanted them to see me. They never saw the donor. They only saw a free ride, never asked how a mediocre, entitled teenager secured one of the most prestigious grants in the country. The broken bracelet sat beside my laptop. Jeweler had valued it at $21,000, but its significance was history, a symbol of dignity snatched away by a teenager who measured worth in likes. Madison's tuition for 3 years, $180,000. The bracelet, $21,000. The calculation was simple. They destroyed something priceless because they assumed I was cheap, not realizing my cheapness was their entire life being funded. I moved the cursor over manage funding, hovered, no guilt, no sadness, just the unflinching weight of a balance finally clearing. I clicked cancel recurring transfer. Confirmation, are you sure? Immediate effect on enrollment. I clicked yes. Status, inactive, funding withdrawn. I leaned back, tea in hand. The silence in the apartment no longer lonely, it was expensive. $180,000 staying where it belonged. The glitch in the matrix arrived at 9 a.m. Monday. Phone rang. Tiffany. Mondays were sacred for influencer content planning. She never called me. I answered voice neutral. Hello, Tiffany. No hello back. Nat, thank God you picked up. Crisis. The conservatory called Ryan. Tuition bounced. I leaned back. Bounced. Withdrawn, she shrieked. Can you believe it? Madison is in the middle of rehearsals. If this isn't fixed today, she'll be pulled from the program. I took a slow sip off coffee. That sounds stressful, stressful. It's a disaster, Tiffany huffed. Look, Ryan is useless with this stuff, and I'm swamped with a brand deal. Since you work in archives and know how paperwork works, can you call them, use your professional voice. Tell them it's obviously a clerical error, and they need to reinstate it immediately. I almost laughed. It was classic Tiffany. Even in a crisis caused by her own arrogance, she was trying to outsource the labor to me. She didn't think for a second that the money was actually gone. To her, money was just something that existed like air. It was a resource she was entitled to. The idea that someone had deliberately taken it away was impossible. I can't call them Tiffany, I said calmly. I'm not a guardian. They won't speak to me, just pretend. She snapped. Say you're her. I don't know her business manager. Just fix it, Natalie. We don't have time for this nonsense. I'm sure the donor has their reasons, I said. My voice was leveled, devoid of the panic she expected. Reasons? What reasons? Madison is a prodigy. This is just some jealous bureaucrat trying to sabotage her. Probably someone who saw her live stream yesterday and got envious of her lifestyle. The irony was so thick I could taste it. She was right, it was about the live stream, but not because of envy, because of exposure. She had exposed their cruelty to the one person who mattered. I can't help you, Tiffany, I said. You'll have to handle this one yourselves. I hung up before she could scream again. I turned my phone to silent. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with the knowledge of what was coming. They were about to hit the wall of reality, and for the first time in their lives, I wasn't going to be there to put a pillow between them and the impact. The denial phase lasted exactly 48 hours. By Wednesday, it had curdled into victimhood. Tiffany posted a video to her Instagram story. She was crying, filtering herself in black and white to look more tragic. Guys, I am literally shaking right now, she whispered into her phone. Some jealous family members are trying to sabotage Madison's future. They hacked the scholarship portal. It's so sad that people can't stand to see a young girl shine. I watched it from my desk at the museum, feeling a strange mix of amusement and disgust. She wasn't asking for help. She was weaponizing her audience. She wanted sympathy, not solutions. Then my phone buzzed. It was Madison. Aunt Natum says you won't fix the glitch. Seriously, I need a new violin bow for the showcase. And since you're being weird, you owe me. The bracelet was junk, but I looked it up and Cartier has a love bracelet that's like, okay, buy me that and we're even. I stared at the message, we're even. She had broken an heirloom, lost a scholarship, and she thought I owed her. The entitlement was breathtaking. It wasn't just a flaw, it was a worldview. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new document on my work computer. I typed a formal header to the board of directors, Elite Music Conservatory. I wasn't just an anonymous donor. In my capacity as a historian, I had spent 5 years archiving the original compositions of the conservatory's founder. I had uncovered lost symphonies, restored brittle manuscripts, and curated the exhibit that brought them international acclaim. I was a silent partner in their legacy. I wrote with precision. I detailed the terms of the Madison H. Artistic Merit Grant. I cited the clause regarding donor code of conduct, specifically the section on integrity and respect for historical preservation. I attached a photo of the broken bracelet next to the founder's original handwritten letter, gifting it to my grandmother. This student, I wrote, has demonstrated a flagrant disregard for the very history this institution is built to protect. By destroying a piece of the founder's personal legacy for social media clout, she has violated the spirit of this grant. Therefore, I am exercising my right to permanently revoke funding. This decision is final and irreversible. I hit send. 10 minutes later, I received a reply from the chairman of the board. Dear Miss Natalie, we are horrified. We had no idea of the connection. The revocation is processed immediately. We will also be reviewing her enrollment status pending a conduct hearing. Thank you for your continued dedication to our history. I closed my laptop. The shift was complete. I wasn't just the aunt anymore. I wasn't the doormat. I was the archavist. I had curated their rise, and now I had curated their fall. The silence on my phone was no longer waiting. It was loading. The jewelry shop wasn't in a strip mall. It was tucked away in the historic district behind a heavy door that buzzed when you pressed the intercom. The air inside smelled of metal polish and quiet concentration. Mr. Abernathy, a man who had spent 60 years staring into the hearts of diamonds, adjusted his loop as I laid the broken pieces of the bracelet onto the velvet pad. Platinum, he muttered, his voice raspy. Mid-century Art Deco, exceptional craftsmanship. You don't see latches like this anymore. They were designed to hold forever. He picked up the snapped safety chain with tweezers, turning it under the harsh light. This wasn't wear and tear, he said, looking up at me over his spectacles. This was violence. Someone pulled this with significant force. I know, I said. He didn't answer immediately. He picked up the main band, the one Madison had called tarnished junk, and tilted it. He paused. He squinted. Then he let out a sharp intake of breath, a sound so loud in the quiet room that I flinched. Miss Natalie, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Do you know the provenance of this piece? It was my grandmother's, I said. She left it to me. She said it was special, but she never said why. Mr. Abernathy beckoned me closer. I peered through the magnifier. On the inside of the band, etched in script so microscopic it looked like a scratch to the naked eye, was an inscription to a leaner for the music that saved me. HV 1948, my blood ran cold. HVH Heinrich von Stein, the founder of the elite music conservatory, the man whose statue stood in the courtyard where Madison dreamed of playing. The man whose original scores I had spent the last 5 years restoring in the archives. Your grandmother, Mr. Abernathy, said softly, was a Leaner Vance. She wasn't just a patron, he said, his eyes wide with reverence. She was his first kiss. When the war ended, she helped him smuggle his compositions out of Europe. He had this commissioned for her. It's not just jewelry, Miss Natalie. This is a relic. It belongs in a museum. I stared at the broken metal. The irony was suffocating. Madison, in her quest for viral fame and shallow validation, hadn't just broken a bracelet. She had desecrated a piece of history directly linked to the very institution she was desperate to join. She claimed to live for music, yet she had literally snapped the legacy of the man who built her world, all because it wasn't shiny enough for TikTok. Can you repair it? I asked, my voice steady, though my mind was racing. I can, Mr. Abernathy said solemnly. I confused the platinum, but the scar will remain. Metal has a memory. Good, I said. Leave the scar. I walked out of the shop into the blinding afternoon sun. I felt heavier, but also sharper. Before this moment, my decision to pull the funding had felt like justice. Now it felt like duty. Madison didn't just lack gratitude. She lacked the fundamental reverence required to be an artist. She was a vandal in the temple of music. I took out my phone. There were 12 missed calls from Ryan. A text from Tiffany popped up. We need to talk now. I didn't reply. I didn't need to talk. I had the truth in my pocket, and it was heavier than platinum. The twist wasn't that I had the money. The twist was that I held the history, and history, I knew better than anyone, has a way of burying those who don't respect it. The phone buzzed again. We're coming over, I smiled. Let them come. I was ready. The ambush happened at 6:00 p.m. on Thursday. I was sitting in my living room reading a book on music theory, enjoying the quiet hum of my paid-off apartment. Then a pounding on the door shattered the peace. I looked through the peephole. It was Ryan, Tiffany, and Madison. They looked frantic. Ryan was pacing. Tiffany's makeup was smudged. Madison looked sullen, her arms crossed, clearly dragged there against her will. I opened the door. I didn't invite them in. I stood in the doorway, blocking their path. "Can I help you? Help us," Ryan exploded, pushing past me into the living room. "Natalie, are you insane? We just got a letter from the conservatory. They're giving us 48 hours to pay $60,000 or Madison is expelled." Tiffany was right behind him, her voice trembling. "They said the donor withdrew funding due to ethical violations." Ethical violations. Can you believe the nerve? "We need that money, Nat. You have to loan it to us." Just until Ryan's next commission comes in. Madison slumped onto my sofa without asking, kicking her shoes off onto my clean rug. "It's so unfair," she muttered. "I didn't even do anything." I watched them, the panic, the entitlement, the complete lack of self-awareness. They still thought this was a negotiation. They still thought I was the safety net. "I can't loan you the money," I said quietly. "Of course you can," Ryan shouted. "You have savings. You live like a nun. We're family, Natalie. You can't let Madison's future be destroyed because of some clerical error." "It wasn't a clerical error," I said. I walked over to my desk. I picked up a single sheet of paper, the printed confirmation of the withdrawal. I held it out to Ryan. "What is this?" He snapped, snatching it from my hand. "Read the signature line," I said. He scanned the document. His eyes stopped at the bottom. His face went pale. He looked up at me, then back at the paper. "Donor signature, Natalie Vance," Tiffany whispered. "You were the donor for 3 years," I said. $180,000 paid quarterly, anonymous. "But why?" Ryan stammered. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted Madison to succeed on her own merit," I said. "And because I knew if you knew the money came from me, you wouldn't respect it. You'd treat it like everything else I give you, expected, disposable, owed." Tiffany sank onto the arm of the sofa. "But you canneled it. Because of the bracelet, not just the bracelet," I said. "Because of the disrespect, because of the entitlement, because you stood there and watched your daughter destroy something precious to me for internet clout. And you didn't even tell her to apologize." Madison looked up, her eyes narrowing. "It was just an old bracelet, Aunt Nat. God, get over it." "It wasn't just a bracelet," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "It was a gift from Heinrich von Staten." The name hung in the air. Even Madison, with her limited attention span, knew that name. It was etched in gold above the entrance to her school. "He gave it to my grandmother in 1948, I continued. "He called her the woman who saved his music. When you broke that safety chain, Madison, you didn't just break jewelry. You snapped a direct link to the founder of the very institution you're begging to attend. You desecrated his legacy." Ryan looked like he was going to be sick. Tiffany covered her mouth with her hand. Madison's mouth fell open, the sullen defiance finally cracking. "You knew," Madison whispered. "I'm a historian," I said. "It's my job to know, and it was my job to protect that legacy from people who don't understand its value." The silence in the room was absolute. The power dynamic had shifted so violently, I could almost feel the air pressure change. They weren't the successful family demanding help from the poor aunt anymore. They were vandals standing in the home of their patron, and the bill had finally come due. Tiffany was the first to break. She burst into tears, but they weren't the pretty filtered tears she staged for Instagram. They were ugly, desperate sobs. She grabbed my hand, her nails digging into my skin. "Please, Nat, you can't do this. It is Madison's dream. She's just a child. You can't punish a child for being silly." I pulled my hand away. "Silly. Breaking a stranger's property is silly. Desecrating a historical artifact because it doesn't match your outfit is character rot." Ryan stepped forward looking haggarded. "Natalie, please, we will pay you back, I swear. Just reinstate the scholarship. If she gets kicked out now, she will never get into Juilliard. Her life will be over." "Her life won't be over." I said. "It will just be different. It will be earned." I looked at Madison. She wasn't crying. She was staring at the floor, her face burning with a mix of shame and fury. "I'm not destroying her future, Ryan," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "I am saving it." They looked at me confused. "If I bail her out now," I continued. "If I let her believe that she can smash history and treat people like garbage without consequence, she will grow up to be a monster. She will have talent, yes, but talent without character is worthless. It is a house built on sand. I walked to the door and held it open. The cool evening air rushed in, clearing the stifling atmosphere of entitlement. I am planting a seed, I told them. It is a hard seed, and it is going to be bitter to swallow. But maybe 10 years from now, when Madison holds something precious in her hands, she will remember the sound of that platinum snapping, and she will treat it with respect. That is the only scholarship I have left to give. They left in silence. No one slammed the door this time. They walked out into the hallway like ghosts carrying the weight of a reality they could no longer deny. 3 weeks later, I picked up the bracelet from Mr. Abernathy. The repair was masterful, but the scar was there, a thin silver vein running through the platinum where the safety chain had been fused back together. I slipped it onto my wrist. It felt different now, heavier, realer. It wasn't just a grandmother's gift anymore. It was a battle scar. Madison was withdrawn from the conservatory. Ryan and Tiffany couldn't come up with the $60,000. She is attending the local public high school now. I heard from a mutual friend that she sold her expensive violin bow to pay for repairs on her own phone screen when she dropped it. It's a start. I sat in my living room as the sun went down, the golden light hitting the stacks of archival boxes. My phone was silent, the bank account was full, the invisible chain was gone. I wasn't the aunt who paid for everything anymore. I was just Natalie, and for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't waiting for permission. It was peace. If you have ever had to cut off a hand that was hurting you just to save your own peace, share this story. You never know who needs permission to finally say.